The night she told me to leave, she didn't raise her voice or throw anything or cry the way people do in movies. She just stood in the doorway of the living room, arms folded, eyes flat, and said it like she was reading tomorrow's weather. "You need to pack a bag and go." I remember looking past her at the couch we bought together, the one with the loose cushion on the left side, and thinking there had to be a second sentence coming. An explanation. A reason. But that was it. I laughed at first, not because it was funny, but because my brain couldn't find the right response. I asked if this was a joke. She shook her head. I asked if we could talk in the morning. She said there was nothing left to talk about. The house was hers anyway. Her name was on the paperwork. Her parents helped with the down payment. I knew all of that, of course. I just never thought it would be used like a weapon. I went to the bedroom and pulled a duffel bag from the closet, the same one I used for work trips, and started throwing things into it without thinking. Shirts, socks, the charger for my nightstand. She watched from the hall like a security guard, making sure I didn't take more than I was allowed. When I reached for a framed photo from our dresser, she cleared her throat, and I froze. "Leave that." I did. I walked out with a bag over my shoulder and nothing else, stood on the porch for a second too long, waiting for the door to open again. It didn't. I slept in my car that night, parked behind a grocery store with the seat reclined as far as it would go, staring at the ceiling fabric and listening to trucks pass on the road. The next morning, I brushed my teeth in a gas station bathroom and went to work like nothing had happened. That was my specialty. Acting like stayed on a friend's couch, then another friend's spare room, then finally a cheap motel on the edge of town that charged by the week and smelled like old smoke and cleaning chemicals. I ate fast food, wore the same rotation of clothes, and told people I was fine. Technically, I was. I had a job. I had a car. I just didn't have a home or a wife or a plan. The divorce paperwork arrived by email, already drafted, already decided. I signed where I was told. I didn't argue about furniture or dishes or the dog we never had. I didn't have the energy. Every night, I lay on the stiff motel mattress and replayed the same questions. How did I miss it? When did she decide? Who was I without the life I thought I was building? A month after I moved into the motel, my car started making a sound I didn't recognize, a low grinding noise that got worse every day. The check engine light came on and stayed on. I knew what that meant. Money I didn't have. I drove it carefully, windows down, radio off, listening to every vibration like it was a warning. One afternoon, it finally gave up in a bank parking lot of all places. The engine sputtered, coughed, and died as I pulled into a space. I sat there with my hands on the wheel, forehead resting against it, feeling that familiar pressure behind my eyes. I didn't cry. I just felt tired. I called a tow truck and waited. While I was sitting there, my phone buzzed with a reminder notification I didn't remember setting. Storage unit payment due. I didn't have a storage unit. Then I remembered. After my mom died a few years earlier, I cleaned out her apartment myself. She didn't have much. Some clothes, old books, a box of documents, and a small tin she kept in the back of her closet. Inside the tin were random things. A couple of keys I never figured out. A folded note with a grocery list on it. And an old bank card, scratched and faded, with her name on it. I almost threw it away, maybe instinct stopped me. I slipped it into my wallet and forgot about it. I'd never used it. I didn't even know if it still worked. Sitting there in the dead car, waiting for the tow truck, I thought about that card. About how my mom used to keep everything just in case. Just in case you need it later, she'd say, smiling like she knew something I didn't. I needed cash for the tow, for repairs, for another week at the motel. My checking account was almost empty. My credit cards were maxed out from living expenses and legal fees. I looked at the bank building in front of me, all glass and stone, and felt stupid for even considering it. That card was probably expired, probably closed, probably useless, but I had nothing to lose. I grabbed my wallet and walked inside. The bank was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're interrupting something important just by breathing too loud. I stood in line behind a woman depositing checks and a man arguing about overdraft fees. When it was my turn, I stepped up to the counter and slid the card across to the teller, already rehearsing my apology. This probably won't work. It's my mom's. She passed away. I just need to check if there's anything on it. The teller picked it up, glanced at it, and then looked at me again, really looked at me, like she was trying to match my face to something in her head. She didn't say anything at first. She typed something into her computer, paused, then typed again. Her posture changed. She sat up straighter. She asked for my ID. I handed it over, my stomach tightening. She compared the name, the photo, the card. Then she excused herself and walked away with the card, disappearing through a door marked staff only. That's when I knew something was wrong. People don't disappear with your card when nothing is happening. I waited, hands clasped on the counter, feeling every second stretch. A few customers glanced at me forever. Then a man in a suit came out, older, composed, the kind of person who didn't rush. He introduced himself quietly and asked me to follow him to a private office. My first thought was that I was about to be accused of fraud, that somehow using my mom's old card crossed a line I didn't know existed. The office was small but polished, with a desk, 2 chairs, and a framed picture of the city skyline. He closed the door behind us and sat down, folding his hands. He asked me to confirm my name, my date of birth, my relationship to the woman on the card. I answered everything honestly, my voice steady even though my heart was pounding. He nodded slowly, then turned his computer screen slightly so I could see it. Before he said anything, I saw the numbers. They didn't make sense at first. Too many zeros. Too big to process. I thought it was a mistake, a system error, someone else's account pulled up by accident. I opened my mouth to say that, but he spoke first, telling me that the account was active, that it had been set up a long time ago, that certain conditions had recently been met. I wasn't really listening. I was staring at the balance, feeling like the room had tilted. My mom worked 2 jobs most of her life. She clipped coupons. She reused envelopes. She worried about rent. None of this fit the woman I knew. I asked him to say it again, slower. He did. He explained that the card was linked to an account that had been left untouched for years, growing quietly, waiting. He said my mother had been very specific about when and how it could be accessed. I thought about her saying, just in case. I thought about sleeping in my car, about being told to leave my own home with a bag and nothing else. I laughed then, a short sound that surprised both of us. I asked if my car could be paid for from that account. He nodded. I asked if it was okay to use it for a motel bill. Of course. He nodded again. But yes, the funds were available. While I walked back out into the bank lobby, everything looked the same, but it felt different, like I was seeing it through new eyes. The tow truck driver was waiting outside when I stepped out, leaning against his truck, scrolling on his phone. I handed him cash without thinking about it, more than enough, and told him where to take the car. As I watched my car being loaded up, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not joy, not revenge, relief. For the first time since that night on the porch, I wasn't wondering how I would survive the next week. I didn't know what this money meant yet, or what I was supposed to do with it, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going back to beg. I wasn't going to explain myself to anyone who decided my value only after seeing a number. My mom had kept this quiet for a reason, and standing there in that parking lot, I started to understand why. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not my friends who let me crash on their couches. Not my coworkers who asked if I was okay. Not even the mechanic who called later that day to explain exactly how bad my car situation was. I paid the repair in full without flinching. Listened to him pause on the phone like he was double-checking the number, then thanked him and hung up. That night, instead of the motel, I checked into a small but clean hotel closer to the city, the kind with real sheets and a lobby that smelled like coffee instead of bleach. I stood under the shower longer than necessary, letting the water hit my back, replaying the day over and over, waiting for the panic to set in. It didn't. What I felt instead was strange calm, like my life had been quietly rerouted without asking my permission. The next morning, I woke up early and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall while the sun crept in, about how she never complained, never explained herself, never showed the weight she was carrying. I remembered her standing in her tiny kitchen, humming while she cooked, telling me that things have a way of working out if you keep showing up. I used to think that was just something people said to make themselves feel better. Now I wasn't so sure. Over the next few days, I went back to the bank twice, meeting with people whose titles sounded important and whose voices were careful, measured. They explained the account in pieces, like they were afraid dumping it all on me at once would break something. I learned that my mom had set everything up years ago, that she'd been told what the account would be worth someday, that she'd chosen not to touch it even when things were tight. Hearing that hurt more than I expected. There were times she skipped meals so I could eat. Times she worked late into the night, hands cracked and sore, still smiling when she came home. And all that time, this existed, waiting. I asked why she wouldn't tell me. One of the advisors said, gently, that some people want their children to learn who they are before money gets involved. I nodded, but inside I felt the ache of all the conversations we never had. I moved out of the hotel into a small furnished apartment a week later. Nothing fancy. One bedroom, a decent couch, a table by the window. I liked that it didn't feel like a reward or a punishment. Just a place to land. I kept going to work like normal, showing up on time, doing my job, wearing the same clothes. No one knew anything had changed, and I liked it that way. It felt like I was carrying a secret that belonged only to me and my mom. Every now and then, my phone buzzed with a message from my ex, short and practical at first. Did you forward my mail? Have you changed your address? Then, slowly the tone shifted. Are you doing okay? I heard you moved. Anymore. I didn't just detached, like she was a chapter I'd already finished reading. A few weeks later, I ran into her by accident at a grocery store. I was reaching for a carton of eggs when I saw her reflection in the glass door. She looked thinner, sharper somehow, like someone who'd been bracing against something. She said my name like a question. I turned and nodded. We stood there for a second, both of us unsure of the script. She asked where I was living now. I told her I had a place. She asked how I was managing. I said I was fine. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. There was something else she wanted to ask, I could tell, something she was circling. But she didn't. We said goodbye like polite strangers and went our separate ways. As I walked away, I felt light, like I'd passed some kind of test without realizing it was happening. The money stayed mostly untouched. I paid off my debts. I set aside what I needed to feel secure. The rest sat there, quiet, waiting for me to decide who I wanted to be next. One afternoon, driving home from work, I passed a rundown building with a hand-painted sign offering job training programs that looked like it had been there since the 80s. I remember my mom taking night classes at a community center just like that, hoping it would lead to something better. It never really did, but she went anyway. That night, I called the bank and asked about setting something up, something small to start. Not a donation with my name on it. Something quiet. They walked me through the process, asked about my goals. I told them I wanted to help people who didn't have a safety net. People who were doing everything right and still barely holding on. It felt like the most natural decision I'd made in years. The foundation paperwork took time. Meetings, signatures, details. Through all of it, I felt steady, grounded, like I was finally moving forward instead of reacting. This time I answered. My ex called again. She sounded nervous, her confidence replaced by something softer. She said she'd heard things, that I seemed different, that maybe she'd made a mistake. I listened without interrupting, without filling the silence. When she finished, I told her I wished her well, but I wasn't interested in going backward. She asked if there was someone else. I said no. The truth was, there didn't need to be. After I hung up, I sat on my couch and stared at the wall, waiting for regret. It never came. What came instead was gratitude. For the struggle, for the clarity, for the woman who raised me to stand on my own before handing me anything that could have made it easier. I realized then that being kicked out, being broke, being lost, all of it had stripped me down to something honest. The money didn't change that. It just gave me room to breathe. And as I sat there in that quiet apartment, I knew I wasn't shocked by what the bank did anymore. I was changed by what my mom had done all along. Life didn't suddenly turn into something flashy after that realization. There were no dramatic purchases, no announcement, no moment where I stood somewhere expensive and felt like I finally belonged. Instead, things got quieter, simpler. I started paying attention to how I spent my days, who I gave my time to, what actually made me feel like myself again. Mornings became my favorite part. I'd wake up early, make coffee in a chipped mug I bought for $2, and sit by the window while the city stretched awake. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't bracing for impact. I wasn't waiting for the next thing to fall apart. At work, I noticed details I'd ignored before. The way certain people carried stress like a badge. The way others showed up consistently without recognition. I started quietly helping where I could, fixing small problems before they became big ones, funding improvements and walk away without needing credit. Word spread anyway, the way it always does, but no one could quite trace it back to me, and that was fine. I ran into my ex again months later, this time outside a restaurant downtown. She was with friends, laughing until she saw me. The laughter faded, replaced by something unreadable. She hesitated, then walked over. We talked for a few minutes about nothing important. Weather, work, mutual acquaintances. She asked how my mom would have felt about everything, and that question surprised me. I told her the truth, that my mom would have shrugged and said to make sure I was doing something worthwhile. She nodded like she understood, though I wasn't sure she did. When she walked away, I didn't watch her go. I went back to my car and sat there for a moment, noticing the absence of pain where it used to live. That's when it hit me that healing isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. One day you just realize you're no longer negotiating with the past. I visited my mom's grave on a random weekday afternoon, the cemetery quiet except for birds and distant traffic. I told her about the foundation taking shape, about the people we'd already helped, about how I finally understood why she waited. I thanked her for trusting me to become someone before handing me the means to do more. Standing there, I felt connected to her in a way I never had before, like this was a conversation she'd been planning. My phone buzzed with a notification from the bank confirming a transfer for a training program we'd just approved. I smiled, not because of the number, but because of what it represented. Somewhere, someone was getting a chance they didn't think they'd ever have. And they wouldn't know my name. They wouldn't need to. That night, back in my apartment, I cooked a simple meal and ate it slowly, savoring the normalcy of it. I thought about how close I'd come to believing I was finished when I was kicked out with nothing but a bag. How easy it would have been to let that moment define me. Instead, it became the thing that cleared the way. Losing everything forced me to see what mattered when there was nothing left to hide behind. The bank didn't shock me by giving me access to money. It shocked me by revealing how carefully my mom had prepared me for that moment. She knew that if I ever needed that card, I'd be ready to use it without losing myself, ready to walk away from people who only saw value in appearances, ready to build a life that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. I went to bed that night without setting an alarm, without checking my balance, without replaying old arguments in my head. Just quiet, just rest. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt rich in a way no number could explain.